This is section 2.2, state income tax. So what are personal exemptions? Personal exemptions are also called withholding allowances. They allow for supporting yourself and others in your family. The formulas that we are going to be using for this section are taxable wages equals annual gross pay minus personal exemptions, and also annual tax withheld equals to taxable wages times the tax rate. Now you can read page 753 to read the given examples under writing decimals as percents. So a few sections before this one, we learned how to write percents as decimals. So now we're doing the contrary. We're writing decimals as percents. So for example A, we have 2 or more decimal places. Okay, so number 1 is let's write 0.10 as percent. So I have this 0.10. My step number 1 is to move the decimals 2 places to the right. Okay, remember on the other section where we learn how to write percent as decimals, we had to move the point 2 times to the left. Now in this case, we have to move the point 2 times to the right. So I now have this point right here. I move it 2 times to the right. 1, 2. Now my point has to be after the 10. Step number 2, it says you add the percentage sign. Right, so instead of having 0.10, now I have only 10. And as a step number 2, I write the percentage sign. And that is all. Now in example B, we have fewer than 2 decimal places. So we need to write 0.4 as a percent. Okay? So I have 0.4. My first step is to use 0 as a placeholder. Okay? So since we have to move the point 2 times to the right, if I add a 0 here, that is just going to make it easier for me to know where to place the point. So as a step number 2, I now move the decimal 2 places to the right. So now you'll see 1, 2. Now my point is after the 0 I just add. And as a step number 3, I add the percentage sign. So instead of having 0.40, I now have 40%. So now we go to our concept check. On problem number 52, we have write 9.1 as a percent. So remember in our step 1, we need to use the 0 as a placeholder. Okay, that's our step number 1. And for step number 2, we need to move the decimal 2 places to the right. So then if we have 9.1, I am going to add the 0 as a placeholder and now move the decimal 2 times to the right. So instead of having 9.1, I now have 910%. So this is my answer right here. Now let's try problem number 53 with 25 and to write it as a percent. So we now have 25. I don't need to add any 0 as a placeholder because it's already given. So I just have to move the decimal 2 times to the right. And so in this case, my answer would be 2,500%. I'm just gonna write it right here. Now problem number 54. We have 12.004. So I'm going to write it right here. I don't need to add any 0 as a placeholder because it already has enough numbers. So I'm moving my decimal 2 times to the right. So I now have 1,200.4%. Go ahead and I write that down here. Now problem number 55 is 0.14. So I write down 0.14. I do not place any 0 because it has enough numbers. So I move the decimal 2 times to the right. And now I have 14%. Now I have problem number 56, 2.185. I write down 2.185. And I don't have to add any zeros because I have enough numbers. So I just move my decimal 2 places to the right. And now I have 218.5%. So now I just write my answer here. Now I am just going to do 2 more problems. Number 57, 0.51. So we have now 0.51. We don't add any 0 because we have enough numbers, so we just move the decimal 2 times to the right. And now I have 51%. And my last problem here would be 58, that is 9.3. So in this case, I do have to place or use a 0 as a placeholder because I don't have enough numbers. So I'll be moving my decimal 2 times to the right. And so my answer is 930% right here. To continue working with the other problems until you finish number 67. Now we go to our second concept check. And on problem number 1, we have find the taxable wages and the annual tax withheld. So the state income tax rate for this problem is 1.5% of taxable income. So we have that our annual gross pay is $28,000 and the person is married. So we are going to be using the circle right here where it says personal assumptions. This will help us to know the amount of exceptions that a person can get depending on if they're single, married, or if they have any other dependent. So for step number 1, we have find the taxable wages. So our formula, remember, is annual gross pay minus the personal exemptions equals to taxable wages. So as annual gross pay, we have $28,000 minus our personal exemptions. In this case, the problem says to use the married personal exemptions. So we use $24,000. And we just simply do the subtraction. I go to my calculator and I have 28,000 minus 4,000. That's a total of $24,000. So my taxable wages are $24,000. Now my step number 2 says find the annual tax withheld and use the formula annual tax withheld equals to taxable wages times tax rate. There's a little note here that it says first convert percentage into decimal before multiplying. So then we have 1.5%. Remember, our first step is to drop the percentage sign. So I now have 1.5. And then I need to move the 0 2 times to the left. So 1, 2. Now I add 2 zeros before the 1. And so my decimal is 0.015. So I go to my formula and now I have the taxable wages, which is the amount we found on step 1, $24,000, times our tax rate, which is 0.15, and we do that multiplication. We go to our calculator and we have 24,000 multiplied by 0.015. So my annual tax withheld is now $360. Now we go to problem number 3 and we have find the amount withheld annually for state tax. Okay, so the gross pay is $23,760. The person is married and has 3 dependents. And the state income tax rate is 4%. So on our step number 1, we need to find the taxable wages. Remember, we're using the formula annual gross pay minus the personal exemptions equals to taxable wages. So for gross pay, we have $23,760. And we need to subtract the personal exemptions. So first, the person is married, right? So the personal exemption for a married person or married couple is $4,000. So first, I am subtracting this $4,000. And also, this person has 3 dependents. So according to our personal exemption circle, each dependent is $2,000. So I am subtracting 3 times $2,000. So first, let's do our addition of all the personal exemptions. So we have $4,000 plus $2,000 plus $2,000 plus $2,000. So that's a total of $10,000. Right, so I'm just gonna write it here so we know that all this amount here gave us $10,000. So to our annual gross pay, we need to subtract $10,000. So go back to my calculator and now I have $23,760 minus $10,000. That is a total of $13,760. So my taxable wages are now $13,760. Now we go to our step number 2, and we need to find the annual tax withheld. Again, our formula for this is annual tax withheld equals taxable wages times tax rate. We first need to convert the percent as a decimal. So I have 4%, which is our state tax rate. I drop the sign, and now I add the point here, right? And we need to move it 2 times to the left. I add 2 zeros since 4 is less than 100 and less than 10. And now my decimal is 0.04. So my taxable wages is what I found on step number 1, which is $13,760. And I multiply it by 0.04. I go to my calculator and I will multiply $13,760 by 0.04. That is a total of $550 with 40 cents. So our annual tax withheld total is $550 with 40 cents. Now go to sections 2.2 of your textbook and complete homework. Complete the problems 5, 8, 9, 12, and 14.